What's going on, guys? Welcome on back to Second and Short in the Cheap Seats Fantasy and Dynasty podcast with your host, Tyler Lauder, joined with our fantasy expert, Jason. Jason, how are you doing in preparation for recovery of dealing with Jonathan Taylor, recovery of dealing with Austin Eckler and Herbert and Jefferson, all these big boom weeks? How are you recovering?
I'm recovering rather well because I own Eckler, about 4 or 5 shares of Eckler. I sold off my shares of Taylor, but I mean, I've got a lot of shares of the big boom players this week. And actually, in a few leagues, I actually have them stacked. So I'm doing really good. I actually beat somebody that had Taylor because I had Eckler and Jefferson. So I was real happy about it. And yes, I talked as much shit as possible, as you know I would.
I mean, yeah, if you had Jonathan Taylor this week and you lost, I am so sorry. Manage your team better. But if you won, congratulations on having the easiest fantasy day. Like after the first set of games, Jonathan Taylor in one of my leagues that I own him in had outscored the other 7 players that had already played for my opponent. And I still had 9 guys to score points for me, and he had 3. And I was like, all right, cool. Day's over. I'm good. But today's episode, what we're going to do is, instead of breaking down a specific fantasy player or values or start sits or any of this other shit, we're going to talk about some questions the community has and ways that we can help navigate and provide some dynasty clarity for this dynasty episode. Some of this stuff deals with commissioners and some of it deals with, just draft order and whatnot. So we're going to go ahead and get started right away. And as we get started, hit subscribe down below, follow along, like everything. And here we go. So the first question we're going to talk about, before we get into like these specific details, let's get some easy ones out of the way. This year, 18 weeks in the NFL season. So naturally, fantasy championships get pushed back from 16 to 17. But there's a question out there is, we didn't adjust early. What should we do? Our playoffs start week 14 when there's bye weeks. So what would you do?
I honestly would manage my team better so I don't have to worry about that first week. But that's just me. But honestly, I would just extend the championship game or the first round an additional week and just add that extra week, or just say screw it and roll with it. I mean, commissioners, some are great, some aren't so good. In this case, he dropped the ball. So you just got to roll with it. And I'm a firm believer, if it doesn't happen before the league starts, if it's not caught and there's not the adjustment before the league starts, you can't be going to willy-nilly and changing shit in mid-season.
But there is going to be some disadvantage if like you have week 14 players on bye and now you can't use them in a playoff matchup. Pretty big one. I'm pretty sure Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, they have a bye. He's the number 1 quarterback in all of fantasy. So if he wasn't able to play, that affects big things.
Well, yeah, I mean, but also if you've managed your team to get that first week bye, it's a non-factor.
Yeah, if your team plays with bye weeks and whatnot in playoffs, and we'll get into that too in a little bit. Essentially, there's 3 things you can do, and here are the answers that we're going to go with them. You just start your playoffs week 14. It sucks. You have to deal with it, but all owners in the playoffs have to deal with it fairly. So there's no anyways getting an advantage. I mean, unless you're playing the people that has like an entire team on bye. Now, the other thing you can do is you can just say everybody in the league gets week 14 off. We don't play an extra game, nothing. Everybody just sits out and we just kind of get to watch football for week 14. And then we'll start our playoffs 15, 16, 17. Or you can do something that actually a league that I'm in had to do. And we just added a week. We added a week in week 14. You could play an extra game and our playoffs will start week 15. And we did this past week, and it just randomly generated a team in there for an extra week of games. And the only downfall to that is if at week 13, you're in the playoffs and then you lose week 14 and you're out. It's the only part that it sucks. And that's kind of why what Jason said, if rules don't change in the off season, it's hard to change them in season. And I'm a firm believer that no rules should be changed mid-season unless it's like a unanimous vote. If all 12 or 10, or if you're in 10 team leagues, If all 12 or 14 or anything bigger say yes to something, then it's fair game. But you can't go into something where majority rules and then you get 10 out of 12 that say yes and 2 say no. That's not fair. They didn't pay to play under those rules you're changing. But ultimately, I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I just think you just need to put out a poll in all of your leagues. If you're on Sleeper app, it's easy. They do polls right there. Create a poll, give them 2 options, and then let everybody vote. And then just say we're going to do majority if that's what you want to do, or whatever. But you just gotta go out there and just try something with your league.
And the biggest impact this year is a player we just talked about, Jonathan Taylor. Week 14 bye. The Colts are on a week 14 bye. So if you're needing that, if you're on that bubble and you're owning Taylor, and you're trying to struggle for that first round win, it's going to be hard. So that's why, go back, listen to our draft strategy, make sure you get that depth at the running back position, and make sure you have a solid depth. I would rather be looking at my matchups to determine who to play on a matchup rather than scrambling the waiver wire.
Well, what our league did is they did for us to have an extra week, instead of you having a matchup base for week 14, we're just playing against the league average is what we're doing in week 14. So the top 6 teams are going to get a win and bottom 6 teams will get a loss. And there's no unfair matchups or anybody getting an advantage. So that's question number 1. Stop. It's really soft. We're going to kind of build into this. We're really going to argue this episode. We're going to have different sides on this. And that's good though. So somebody was asking, they were sitting here and they were like, our draft order is determined by points scored. And that means that the teams, I believe that's what they were saying, but they were just kind of asking, how should draft order be determined? It was saying the team that scored the least amount of points in the season gets the number 1 pick. And I immediately shut that down. I'm going to tell you right now, there's no question about this. Points scored should never be determined for the number 1 seed. And I'm going to tell you why. You can sit all of your starters on your bench and put in nobodies in your starting area, and that's fielding a starting lineup. So you're not, playing nobody. And you could just have really low points per game. And I think that's a bad thing. I'm going to say what I think you should do, and I'll let you rebuttal. But I think potential points should be determined for who gets 1-1. It shouldn't matter your record. It should just be potential points, because that will tell you how good a team actually is, that it doesn't matter who they started. They're the worst team.
Yeah, I mean, I could see your logic on that. Now, like I said, I mean, I'm a records kind of person. I think the records in a lot of my leagues, we actually have the quote unquote toilet bowl to, play that out. So to ensure that teams aren't tanking and everything. But I kind of like that, the fact you're bringing up the potential points, because that's a good factor to interject in there as a extra layer to determine your draft position. Now, one of the leagues I'm in, we just went to this a few, like 2-3 years ago. We actually have the lottery, and it's fun. It's fun because statistically, you're there. We in the leagues we've ran, everything has went chalk somehow. And it statistically comes out in favor of everything, and it's worked. The reason why we went to this is because at that time we had an owner that was really not active, and he just didn't care. We had to hunt down money for the year. We had to hunt down a lot of stuff, and it created a headache. And at that time, we had the extra pick. You got the 2-1 pick for if you won the toilet bowl, you got 2-1. So that kind of wasn't working out, because this owner, he would pay, he would hit, miss, really wasn't setting lineup stuff. So we had to come to a different approach with his team once we had somebody else take over. So we went to the lottery format, and it's really worked out great for us. This league's been going on for 11 years, which is uncanny for a Dynasty league. So we was on the cusp of when Dynasty League started booming. So that is where. But I really do, like I said, I like your potential points because it gives you a good read of how good that team actually is.
The problem with the lottery system is that a team could have the 7th best record and get the number 1 overall pick. And I believe the whole point of the rookie draft is to help the worst teams get better. That's the point. If you're the worst team in the league, you deserve the right to get a better player to help balance the league and to tip the scales. And even if it has never happened in your league, it can happen. And that's an issue because then if I have a choice, I can be the final seed in the playoffs and get bounced in 1 week, or I can miss the playoffs and probably get with a 12% chance at the number 1 pick. I'd rather take those odds.
But you can combat this too. This goes back to a previous discussion, trading future picks. You could be if you've traded that future pick, you could potentially the lower team that's traded a future pick to get better, that's went to a playoff team, or a team that's also in that lower tier, it could also hurt their draft position and help yours. Because if me and you swap first right now, we'll use our league example. I'm the 7th team in the league. Statistically, I should miss the playoffs. Mm-hmm. You've got the number 1 seed locked up. Mm-hmm. If me and you swapped first in this, and say I miss the playoffs, you have my first, I have yours. I could potentially go from picking 12th, and I can move up to 6th and get that player that helps me. On the flip side of that, statistically, you could go from 12, you could go all the way up to 1.
Yeah, but that seems like an issue, though, because now what I think that does, I think it prevents trades from happening from lower teams. Because when I'm out here trading, be honest, if anybody's in our league, any league that I'm in, you listen to this, little insider tip here, I want to find and expose the teams that I project will be in the bottom 4 every year. And I want to poach their first round picks. Now, if it's going to be random who gets the number 1 pick, I'm not going to be trading for future first anymore because I'm not going to sell you Dalvin Cook on what should be the 1-1. And now I get 1-6. I just got hosed on a trade because of a lottery. That's an issue I have. Now, I get the system because it adds excitement to your league. It gives you like a whole day in the offseason that you can hey, today's lottery day. And it's pretty exciting. And I feel like it is because the NBA has their own lottery thing and it's a whole program and it is fun. For me, I'm going to give you a little insight of what I do in one of my leagues I run. Now, this is a big league, 16 team, single quarterback. But what we do in that league is it's broken down into tiers. So the top 8 teams make the playoffs. Very simple. There's 4 divisions. If you win your division, you're in. And then the next 3 best records and then the highest points scored, they're in. The first 4 teams that miss the playoffs, they go into a playoff pool themselves to win the pick 1.5. And they go through that ladder in that area. And then the bottom 4 qualify for 1-1. So I use record. I do. What I do is if you finish 13th to 16th based on record, you're now qualified to win the 1-1. And then in the final weeks, all the way through championship, week 17 now, which one of those 4 teams has the lowest potential points gets 1-1. And that's how they're ranked. So the bad record locks you into the top 4, but having the worst team locks you into 1-1 after that. Really, as long as your league is okay and happy with it, it's cool and balanced. I don't ever think it should be points scored, though, because that just encourages tanking and potential points, lotteries, toilet bowl championships and everything. Those things prevent tanking. Those things, I do think that should be added in every league. I do think teams that miss the playoffs should compete for that extra 2.1 or 1.13, whatever you want to call it. I 100% agree because it adds excitement, keeps everybody active, prevents bad teams from actually selling all their players because they want that extra, 113. All right. So now we have 2 questions down and I feel like we're kind of moving really well with this. And we have 3 questions down because we talked about draft order. Oh man, we are flying. So that means, oh no, we have 2. Never mind. Commissioners, dictators. some would say, but if you hate your commissioner, because whatever, I don't know. I never understood people that hate their commissioner, but then still participate in leagues year in and year out. Like, move on. So this guy said, we accepted a trade. This guy left this trade over the weekend. I was unsure about it. And then Monday morning, after the Sunday games, I was like, I think it was Monday morning. He was like, you know what? I like that deal. And he hit accept. Locks in. Nobody gets the players. Monday night games happen. Tuesday morning comes around and the commissioner reversed the trade because the original guy complained that he didn't want to do the deal anymore that he previously sent because things had changed. And I'll let you touch on this, but here's my opinion. If you don't want people to accept trades, don't send them. If you don't want people to accept trades, don't leave them queued up for 5-6 days. It happened to me, actually. I left a trade up and I traded away, and all of a sudden I had a trade for like Josh Jacobs to send him away for like a pick. And then I forgot I had it up, and it was like the week 1, the NFL season, and he had like 2 touchdowns, and she had like 20 fantasy points. And the guy accepted it mid-game, and I was like, oh, that damn it. But then it worked out for me eventually. But that's my take on that. What do you take on dictators and trades?
Yeah, and I actually had this happen to me in a league and that I'm no longer a part of, and the commissioner was a douche. Therefore, that I left the league because what happened was it was a trade. It was the guy sent me the trade. He had sent me a message. I really want to do this trade. I said, I'm out of town right now. When I get back, I'll look at it. Well, I wasn't driving back, so I had time to look at it. So I hit accept. It was right before kickoff on a Sunday. Guy posted this big, long rant. Well, I didn't know he was going to accept so quick. And to me, my reply was, well, you shouldn't offer the trade. Well, you told me you wasn't going to, you had to look at it. Well, obviously, if I message you, obviously I hit accept. I looked at it. So this is where I think you need to have a checks and balance system. With whatever route you go, if you want to have like a subcommittee of other owners that, that balances out the commissioner, like we talked about, when determining collusion, or, just go with the whole thing of, look, as long as it's not collusion, everything's trade. If you sent a trade out you didn't want to accept, you should have revoked it before it was accepted. Or just send something out like a
message.
A simple, and most times, I don't know, it might have been in our league that I sent a guy and his son run the team together, and they had a big argument. And I got Melvin Gordon for a 3rd round pick because the son was pissed off at his dad and accepted the trade. Guy sent me a message. He was like, hey, this is the situation. My reply was, it's cool. We'll reverse it. I understand. It was just something to get trade talk started. I wasn't a dick about it. Later on, he wanted to make a trade. He sent me a very favorable offer that I accepted simply because I wasn't a dick. And I think that goes a long way, because if you have a nice league mate that, you have a mutual respect with, it's going to benefit you in trade talks and stuff like it did with me. But I think once a trade goes down, it's done. It's a done deal unless extenuating circumstances can be determined or collusion. Everything should be finalized once the trade's accepted.
So the biggest thing that we're talking about here, though, is we're talking about dictators, and we're talking about the commissioners that just overrule themselves and do that and take away and veto trades. Now I do. Here's my thing: if I send you a trade and then you accept it within like within 10 minutes, because we've been trade talking, and I go, oh shit, that wasn't supposed to be in there, I'm going to bring that forward to you first and the commissioner kind of as a whole. That's what I've never really been in this situation where I've sent those trades, but I've seen them happen. If you can bring it forward within within the hour that it was sent out and accepted, 100% it should be reversed, as long as As I don't know. As long as it's like this happened, I accidentally added this, and like we didn't have trade talk saying I was going to add that. As long as we don't have that, then
Right.
yeah, I think it should be reversed, and that should be okay. I don't think commissioners should be able to go in and just reverse stuff by hearing one side and not hearing the other. Because in a situation where a guy's mad that a guy accepts a trade after like 3 days it's been sitting there, if he goes to both owners, there should be some type of trade, unless you're these barbarians. Sorry if I'm calling people out, but if these barbarians that just send random trade offers and you never message your league mates ever about a trade, then I guess whatever. We don't know how to deal with this or talk about it. But like the way everything's evolving, there's so many different places like Discords and group me's and WhatsApp, Facebook communities that people have communications that you should at least be able to have a, hey, would you do this, this, and this for this, this, and this? And where a person goes, yes. And like you should have that kind of confirmation. And then you should have the sent and accept. Like you should have receipts everywhere. And if you have those receipts, then yeah, you can reverse it. But the commissioners, shame on you. You should never do that. If you're in a league right now where a commissioner runs things just the way they want, you never get to vote on things, they determine everything, and you're all paying for the league, then I would say finish the season and get out. Try and get your bag and get out. That's me.
And a lot of times you also got to look, these commissioners also have teams in this league. So they might be reversing trades with a team that is actually better than them, and it's hurting their chances. So they've got personal stake in the reason to reverse. And that's why I think you need a checks and balance system. In fact, like I said, any trade offer, me and Ty, we send shit trades to each other. We give each other
I've
hell
never
when
sent you that trade.
Yes, you have. And trade talks, not actual trade talks. We but with binding your relationship, we'll have trade talks.
Yeah,
that won't be actual trade offers.
No,
it'll just be like, well, like a good example is you was talking about trading Dalvin Cook, and I asked you I'm gonna say something like, I should get that podcast discount. Just back and forth, just banter. But when it comes down to brass tacks, like we was talking about a Kyler Murray deal, then we start talking, legit offers. We talked about me trading you Brady. You sent me, this is what I do. I took a look, and then things transpired for both of our teams. Mm-hmm. That totally went separate ways. And it's you get that trade talk. Now there's some people that I'll just send something to, say, and I'll put in the comment, looking to trade. This is what I'm looking at. And like you said, there's multiple platforms you can go. I think most of the league that I'm in, we have either the group me, we have, some of the leagues, we all have each other's cell phone numbers. You always have an email address to say, worst case scenario, hit email league. That way it includes your commissioner, it includes the person, be like, this is what's going on, because including your league mates in a mistake like this, when something gets jacked up and the commissioner overrules it, goes a long way too, because your league mates may back you for that change and put that commissioner in check, which is a good thing as well.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Like, whenever I have this situation or I've seen it, it's always brought forward to the group to make sure that it just can get fixed the right way. But yeah, don't let dictators handle your shit, especially if it's a league that you all pay for. Yeah, that's just me. Especially when they have teams involved, it's dicey and everything. I do have a situation that came up where somebody called me a dictator, because I run 5 leagues, and I run some big salary cap leagues, and I had this guy. I run these competitions. We talked about this. And I run these competitions where I allow people to get free draft picks just for participating in games. Like, I will just give out a draft pick. I don't know if we already fully went into the details about this.
We did off air. We talked about it all. Yeah, we talked about it off air.
And essentially what I do is in these leagues, I offer 3 games to give you compensation draft picks, just like the NFL gives away compensation draft picks. We do a draft only league just to see who's the best drafter. You draft it, walk away, you never look at it again. Highest point score at the end of the year wins. And everybody has 5 players on IR. It's miserable, but it's fun. Then we do a pick 'em, and then we do a survivor. Very simple. Well, something happened with survivor, and both the last 2 teams got out of the exact same week. So I just on the fly, I said, okay, we're just gonna have an overtime. Next week, you're gonna pick 3 teams. And if you guys tie, then we're gonna go on to another tiebreaker, whatever. And we went on to a tiebreaker because one guy had the Pittsburgh Steelers and he had a tie, but they both had the same amount of wins. So I didn't feel like giving either of them a win was fair. And they both agreed to that. So I made a special Monday Night Football. It was like a parlay. It was like a 10-thing parlay. Pick left or right on this. Whoever gets the most right wins. And one guy was calling me a dictator and saying that the whole league should have say in something because they pay for the league. And this is the only time I will ever argue and say fuck you to everybody else in the leagues I run. Because this is an extra thing I'm doing on the side that I'm putting work in, that nobody pays for, that nobody has to participate in, and I'm giving away free picks. It's also in our league bylaws as well. And he was like, well, I'm just going to quit. And I said, that's cool. See you later. Bye. I don't care. I don't care. It's the only time I will say that these commissioners, me included, everybody else, should be dictators is when it's an outside source of something that is not paid for by the league. If it's your creation, it's your thing. Yeah. Like if you set up a March Madness pool and the winner gets, an extra 4th round pick, nobody should get to argue with you when you make a decision on a ruling because it's your thing. That's me. Let's move into a question that we've been talking about all year long. We're going to talk about divisions. This is our 4th question out of 5. How should divisions be set up? And I believe that there is a wave going through Dynasty right now that is eliminating divisions completely. And I think people are slowly getting on board with it, but it's here.
Yeah. And I'm a firm believer. I think if you're going to division, it should only be 2 divisions or no divisions. I'm a firm believer of that because when you get multiple divisions, you get teams spread out like our league. I like to use our league as an example. 2 divisions are very subpar middle of the road divisions. The other 2 divisions are really front loaded. You with your 1 loss to me.
If any division had me in it, though, it would be a front loaded division. So that's not fair to say.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, you're the front load. I mean, you're the top team, but like outside of like the rest of our division would be in the mix to lead 2 of the other divisions.
Yes.
Because points and everything factored in. So, and we got 4 divisions, and I'm totally trying to get that, bringing that up to look into getting that changed because when you go in that, this is going to kind of dovetail into something we're going to talk about later, is you go into tiebreakers. Mm-hmm. And tiebreakers become tricky, and which we're going to discuss because it can hurt a lot of feelings. You can never get a consensus agreement on it. You're going to have, people wanting one thing, people being opposed to it. So you're never going to get a true middle of the ground. And you're never going to make everybody happy, which is impossible to do anyway. But I'm a firm believer. Get rid of the divisions. If your league has divisions, if they're adamant about having divisions, have 2. That way your top 2, your division winners get the 2 buys. I'm a firm believer with that.
I think league size is a huge factor in this.
Yes.
I believe that if you are a 12-team league, that you don't need divisions. But if you do divisions, you need to have 3 divisions in a 12-team. It's for scheduling purposes, because if you're going to play 14 weeks, that means you play your 3 league mates twice. That's 6 games. There's 8 other teams in the league. You play everybody else once. That's a 14-game schedule. It's perfect fitting. But you could do that exact same exercise with no divisions at all. And instead of playing 3 specific people twice, you play 3 random people twice. It's the same concept. By doing this, we're getting rid of, if you get rid of divisions, which I believe everybody should do, unless you're in these, like I'm in a 24 team league. There's a conference of 12 in UK. There's a conference of 12 here in America. And that's perfect. But otherwise, and I'm in another one where there's 28 teams and we have 7 divisions of 4, but it's a special themed league. We'll talk about that in another episode. But otherwise, I really think you should move away. If you're in a standard type Dynasty league, you should get rid of divisions. If you're in like a 16 team league, I could see maybe using some, but which I do in mind. But if you get rid of them, what it provides for you is, instead of automatically giving playoff spots to people that win their division, that finish the season with a 7-7 record, and they just get a free division, a free playoff ticket. What it will do is it kind of sets it up by record. And that's where our next conversation comes into play. Let's say you're in a league with no divisions. How do you determine who gets what? Well, obviously record is the first say. If you're the best record and nobody else has the same record as you, you get the number 1 seed. But now we got 2 teams with the exact same record. So now how do we determine that? We have we're going to argue here. We have 2 different theories. So go ahead and give your theory on how to handle a tiebreaker of going into the playoffs.
See, my theory is you should have 2 determining factors. First, if you got divisions, you go by your head-to-head record, and then you go to either divisional record or points, whichever one. Those are 2 interchangeable for me, because one, and you're going to argue this because we did this off air.
That's why we jumped into our episode today, because we were talking about this stuff.
Because you're going to see, yes, buys factor in, injuries factor in. You might not catch that team at their best that week, but it's a point of life, in the NFL. Do you catch teams at their best every week? No. I'm a Giants fan. We've been without Barkley. Can we say, well, we scored this many points this week, even though we didn't have our best running back? So should that factor into the? I like keeping things as much as quote unquote real life scenarios as possible, and head to head record matters.
So head to head is your first tiebreaker. Now, here's my argument against head to head, because in the real NFL, those people actually get to dictate if they win or they lose. So it's different. If you lost to somebody, they beat you head to head. Fantasy, we're not actually going head to head. My fictional players, or real players, but my team is going up against your fictional configuration of a team. We have no control over how much they touch the ball, they play, they score. All we can control is who starts. Therefore, head-to-head doesn't matter, because we're not actually going head-to-head. And on top of that, we're only going head-to-head based on what we're projecting and hoping for. This is why my argument is that points scored should be the number 1 tiebreaker, because if I'm 7-7 and you're 7-7, but I've scored 300 more points than you and you beat me in 1 week, I'm still a better team because I scored more than you. We're only 7-7 because you had a softer schedule and I had a harder schedule. That's how I look at those things. I think the way you get points, the way you get wins is by scoring more points. So therefore, scoring more points should be valued more, because that's what gets you wins. That's just where I come from.
And so basically what you would prefer is a rotisserie league, where you don't go head to head, you just go by points per week, and that's determines your seeding. So what you've just described is a rotisserie league, where there's no head-to-head matchups. You just go points scored every week as a running total.
Head-to-head is only created for people to make fun of their friend when they beat them. It is literally only invented for you to humiliate somebody else by saying, I was better at this than you were. Or in the case of, hey, you had Jonathan Taylor and I still beat you this week, and now you can say something. That's the only reason head-to-head exists, because head-to-head exists in the real world. And I'm okay with head-to-head. I'm not against that. But when it comes to tiebreakers, I think how many points you score will determine how good of a team you are. And this is the same thing we said with draft order. that I think potential points should get used because that'll actually tell us potentially you could have scored this, which is still worse than everybody else. Even at your best, you were the worst team. That's how I look at that.
But also, you got to factor in what if you just got lucky? You had somebody that blows up 2 weeks, gets you an insane amount of points.
But you have to start him,
say
though.
it was that's what I'm saying. Say hypothetically, let's take the Derrick Henry scenario. Derrick Henry goes out. Say Adrian Peterson comes in, blows up for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
You had him for 4 weeks. Now he got released. Does that mean that you're, because you had to use it, you got him on free waivers? Does that mean that your team is actually better? No, you're better.
Yeah.
You was better for 4 weeks
because I started players that scored more points. That's what makes a team good. I was able to maneuver and start the better players and get the wins because I scored more points. That's where the argument comes in.
You still got to do it head-to-head. You still got to – head-to-head's a little harder because you got to factor in matchups out of necessity. Cordell Patterson's a good example.
Talk about our matchup. Talk about you have one victory over me, but I also have one over you. Now, if we compared our points scored every week, what would our records be? That's the thing right there. You might have beat me on 1 week, but would you have beaten me on all 11 weeks?
It doesn't matter.
It does matter. That's where it matters.
I get to shit talk you. I get to shit talk you. I get to hang my hat on that 1 week. You will not live. You will not live that. You will not. Hey, it's what have you done for me lately?
Yeah, that's true.
What have you done for me lately? Quit being a Steelers.
I'll let you know in a couple weeks what I've done for you lately. I'm gonna get a championship, and I'll show you my championship in a couple weeks.
Like I said, if this podcast will blow up, if I stick you to the 6th spot and I match up with you and I get a win over you to go to the championship, this podcast will cease to exist because I'm pretty sure you won't talk to me for about 2 weeks.
Any given Sunday. Here's what I think.
Exactly.
As long as I at least win the 3rd place game, I'm okay because I get my money back. Then I'm okay. But if you beat me and then I lose in that 3rd place game and you cost me money, I'm gonna be mad. That's what I'm gonna be mad. Because I have a rule. If I don't win any money, and that doesn't include coming out even. If I don't place 1st or 2nd in any league all year long, I have to drop leagues. That is a commitment I've made to myself. So,
well, if you drop this league, just hand your team to me.
No way.
I will gladly take over your team. You can orphan your team and bestow it to me when you leave.
I don't like to brag about how good my team is and everything because I feel like a lot of fantasy is luck based, and I mean it's obviously it's predicting. Like we see these kids I call them kids because they're fucking kids on TikTok. But there's these kids that fantasy guys on TikTok, and they're all like, "I'm the best person on this app and everything, and I'm the greatest, and my takes are always right." And they're doing the whole Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless thing where you're just really loud a lot, and then when you're right and you're loud, everybody else can hear it, so they remember it type thing. But everything is very luck based in fantasy and in Dynasty. You can kind of project where players are going to go. Like I thought DeAndre Swift was the best running back in last year's draft class. I mean, I'm not wrong. I mean, I'm kind of wrong because Jonathan Taylor is looking so good, but Swift was like the 4th projected running back in that class. But I thought his skill set was good no matter where he landed. And I got lucky. Detroit is using him well. Beginning of the season, they decided they were like, we're going to use 2 running backs, but Williams has kind of been faded out and Swift is getting these carries. I'm getting lucky that the game plan, the game script is going the way it is. You can kind of project these things, but it's all luck. So like I'm saying, I don't want to brag about my team, but if you want to brag about my team, I'll let you brag about my team all day long. And you can do it because the more you brag about my team, the more impressive that win looks.
Yeah, I mean, you've got 1 loss. It was to me. So I mean, you've been blowing other teams out, but for some reason you can't beat the 7th best team.
I couldn't beat you twice.
Exactly. That's what you can't beat me twice. I mean, it's easy to win 1. It's hard to win back to back. It's even harder to win 3 times. So we may have a rubber matchup in the playoffs, which I really hate myself because I would not be in this predicament if I didn't use the fucking app to set a lineup 2 weeks. And I would have started one less player than that we're able to, because the app is shit, because it's a third-party app.
If you're on My Fantasy League, do not use the app. Use your web browser. Simple as that. But that's going to do it for us here on our, the cheap seats. This episode something. I think it's 19, episode 19 of our podcast. But yeah. So what I want you guys to do is, if you're listening to a clip of this on wherever at Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, leave a comment down below on what you think are some questions that you want us to answer here in the Dynasty community. If you're listening on YouTube, easy comment section down below. Give us your takes on the 5 questions we asked on what you should do for determining the number 1 pick. How do you feel about dictators in fantasy football, the commissioners? How do you do divisions, playoff seeding? And what should you do if you need to expand to week 17? That is all for us. You see all of our links on here, all social medias. Follow along.